we all know about Wayne Gretzky, and yeah, the typical answer is he was never the fastest, he was never the strongest, he was never the most skilled, but he was the smartest, and he made the best decisions, and he had the quickest reaction times.
So on that note, let me share a fun story with you. I don't know if I've ever told this on YouTube, but I used to own the brands Hockey Mom and Hockey Dad in Canada. That led me to a nice meeting with Walter Gretzky on several occasions. And
Okay.
there was one day where Walter and I were at a TV station waiting to get interviewed together, and it was up in Hamilton. And he was telling me a story, and he said, here's the difference between Wayne and everybody else. He said Wayne was almost OCD about practicing. So if you think about it, Walter built Wayne a rink in the backyard. The
Yeah.
reason why he built Wayne in the backyard was self-preservation, because up in Brantford, it was frickin' cold, and he had enough. He was outside working on the bell lines all day long. He didn't want to be outside all night too, standing there at the rink. So, which was out in the open in a field. So he built a rink in the backyard simply for self-preservation. And his wife Phyllis would quite often have to say to him after he was done watching the news, hey, did you get Wayne in the house yet? Because he would totally forget Wayne was in the backyard. So, as much as people like to say Walter was this ever-present hockey dad sort of coaching him along, no, he was in the house watching TV while Wayne was out in the backyard. Now, that's now been filled in. That's a pool in the backyard, but or no, dugout, it's a pool. But the other thing he said was when Wayne would come in every night, in the basement, he had a very specific place for all of his equipment. It all got laid out so he could see it all dry out. And in his mind, that OCD was, I know where all my things are. So tomorrow when I'm driving to the game with my dad, I'm not going to be thinking about, oh shit, are my gloves in the bag? Is my helmet in the bag? Like I'm a hockey dad. How many times have I gone to the rink and you get to the rink and somebody says, does anybody have an extra pair of gloves or a helmet or skates? My kid left them at home. It's a 2-hour drive.
Right.
We try to empower our kids to pack their own bags, and we don't check them thinking this is a life lesson until you get to the arena and somebody's missing something. Then it's a parental problem that you got to deal with, and you're heading off to the closest sporting goods store. So
Yeah.
what Walter said was that Wayne had this uncanny ability to he always knew that his stuff was dry and ready to go in the bag. So he was organized, number one. Number two, because he was organized, the conversations that they had going to the rink was, hey, little Johnny here, he's working really hard and he's really good at, turning to the right. So I need to find a way to get him to the puck as he comes around the right-hand side of the net. So it's on his stick when he comes around the net. So they talked about helping other teammates get better. That's all the prep time was in the car rides. And so many people think it was all about he was bigger, stronger, more skilled. He's got the most assists for a reason. He was always thinking about how can I make everybody around me better, right? So that at the end of the day, we could all improve together. So that's just a fun aside. I don't think I've ever shared that story. I know what you're thinking. What would Ziggy do? Hey everybody, Dave Bazanko here for the Resilient Strategies podcast. I've got a special guest today, Chris Goulet. I've known Chris for probably about 10 years now, and Chris is a former hockey player, and he lives the Canadian dream, I suppose. Like when we grow up in Canada, we all grow up thinking we're going to be hockey players and make it to the NHL. Some of us get along farther down that road than others, and Chris has certainly outpaced me in that regard with his hockey prowess. But today we're going to be hopefully learning from each other, having a really robust conversation. And again, this channel is all about just learning different strategies that we can use, recognizing that sometimes, you're not alone in your struggles. And let's find some great ways to move forward together and learn how to be resilient together. So with that, I'm going to do a quick introduction. So Chris, just to sort of set the stage here, Chris comes from a bit of a hockey family. He moved away at 15 years of age to move up to Toronto to go to school and play hockey. So not many of us get to live that part of our dream where we actually move away from our families that early in our career. But Chris did that, moved up to Toronto, played some hockey up there, a former junior A hockey player, now the skills development coach for the Renfrew Wolves in the CCHL, just outside of Ottawa. And Chris has been coaching young kids. And I can tell you, I sat down with Chris about 6 months ago and looked at some of the coaching that he does. He was showing me some examples. And the one thing that I will say about our guest today, he is a very well-spoken young man, He has a good head on his shoulders and a good sort of mindset as to how he likes to develop and help kids. So I think that's a great starting point for anybody in his career. So Chris, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me here. I'm obviously happy to be here chatting with you.
Awesome. So maybe you can just give us a story, give us your background, tell us kind of where you started, why you moved to Toronto at 15, what that kind of looked like, and where that brings you to today.
Sure. I mean, so I would have moved in grade 10 to Toronto. I mean, in my mind at the time, it was all focused on hockey, of course, because that's the fun thing. That's the thing that I'm excited to do. That's when I'm 15 years old, that's what I'm most hungry for in life. But really, it was about schooling. It was like I ended up going to a private school called Peak Premier Elite Athletes Collegiate, I think it was called. It's now defunct. It's turned into Blythe Academy, but it was more because, to be honest, I wasn't doing great in school in grade 9 when I went to West Park there. I was straight 50s, 60s, maybe a 70 across the board, not doing well. So like I said, in my mind, I was moving for hockey. It was all fun. It was exciting, but obviously, in the grand scheme of things, it was to go to a private education system, get downsized in classroom sizes, and really have a better, allow the teacher to have a better focus on me, and so that therefore I can be successful. And I mean, it worked out. My grades over the 4 years of high school, it's not like I was ever a 90s guy or anything like that, but I at least graduated with 70s, 80s compared to 50s, 60s in grade 9. So that was much improved personally. But no, from there, I played hockey a few seasons in Toronto there, playing some minor hockey. That was a lot of fun, obviously, going to school, focusing on hockey, focusing on school, building a lot of new friendships. Being 15, that was my first time being away from home for any length of time. Um, like is fun little story, I guess. Back in high school, I remember my first day in grade 10. I was the kid that sat alone at lunch because I didn't know one single person there. But by the end of it, I'm proud to say, I had a lot of lasting relationships to this day with friends, faculty, staff in the school that like I said, I still chat with to this day, still keep up with, still help them in some situations. Now there's there's some staff members with some kids that are getting into hockey that I've skated with and whatnot before. So I guess in the long road, obviously, that little bit of my life paid off pretty positively. And then, like you said, I played some junior A hockey in various parts of Canada. I went across to British Columbia once upon a time. I played in a few centers near Ottawa, Brockville, Carleton Place. Again, similarly to Toronto, I still have relationships to this day, made some great friends, made some great memories doing that. And then ultimately came home and finished up playing junior B hockey for the Thorold Blackhawks, which is locally, obviously, we're from St. Catharines here, next town over. And Thorold had if I ever came home to play junior hockey, I always wanted to play for Thorold. I mean, I was a little kid, in the stands watching them play. The company that my dad helped manage, they were a main sponsor of Thorold when they had a lot of success in the early mid 2000s. So ultimately, I knew the owners there. I had a lot of friends on the team already, so it was a pretty easy transition to come home and finish up playing hockey essentially and have a lot of fun. And again, memories, friendships, and even locally, a lot of those friendships have turned into, hey, I have an old teammate that's a mechanic or something like that, or hey, I have an old teammate that works here, works there. So obviously there's some networking involved as you get a bit older.
That's awesome. And I think the one big takeaway for me there is, you're right now, you've moved into coaching, and that's something that, to one degree or another, it's something that I wish that I had done. I mean, my thing was baseball, playing
Mm-hmm.
hardball, going down to the States to Missouri to play baseball, and wishing that now I had done more coaching as I got older. So you're kind of in the sweet spot of, maybe I can be a coach and see where that takes me if I'm not going to be a player. So I think
Sure.
that's where a lot of maybe guys in Canada who, or even in the States, who play hockey. I mean, baseball is the American sport and football. Hockey is the Canadian sport, and we export
Exactly.
a lot of Canadians down to the NHL down in the States, but there's a lot of guys who never get there, and you
Hmm.
just wonder the what ifs and could they have made a career in their sport other than just playing. So,
Right.
kudos to you for taking those steps to move into the coaching world. And I know, again, after seeing you firsthand, how well spoken you are, especially with kids. I just think it's a perfect fit for you.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly enjoy it. So like after I mentioned like obviously playing in Thorold there, after I stopped playing, I went to University of Guelph for a little bit, then transitioned back home to going to Niagara College to focus on something more that I wanted to study in. I ended up doing a business at Niagara. I was doing geography at Guelph, which really wasn't my cup of tea. Um, but I ended up coming back home, and then that year I would have been 22 years old. I'm now 31. So I would have been 22 attending Niagara College, and I started coaching for a prep school in Toronto called Everest Academy, and that was a team that we went down to the States or various parts of the country a lot and traveled. They had quite an extensive schedule, but that was an introduction to my coaching career, and I had a lot of fun personally. The team had a lot of success, so that obviously made it a lot more fun. Um, and then the following season, when I was 23, I got a call from a fellow named Scott Barnes, who I now still work for and still have a good relationship with to this day. But he called me because he was becoming the head coach of the Pelham Panthers in the GOJHL, one of the junior B teams down here, and he was looking for an assistant coach. The head coach at Everest that I worked for had a relationship with Scott in Pelham already, so from there I got hired on in junior B, and then we Scott and I spent the one season in Pelham together, and then the following season he ended up purchasing the Thorold Blackhawks, the team that I used to play for, ironically. So obviously from there I was hoping to get hired on again, stay with him. Fortunately I did. We spent, I think, 6 seasons in Thorold, between Thorold and then eventually moving to Port Colborne. They're now the Port Colborne Sailors
Mhm.
in the GOJHL. He's still the owner there. Um, but yeah, I mean, again, learned lots, had some great memories. Um, Ultimately, did some networking, and made some business relationships, whether it be through Scott or other staff members within the league, building relationships with them. Overall, it was a positive experience. And then now this is my first year where I'm now doing a role as assistant GM with Renfrew in the CCHL, which is completely different than coaching a team that's only about 20-30 minutes from my house. Now I'm trying to help, or I guess, orchestrate a team that's 5.5 hours away from my house.
Hey, that's the world we live in. We live in a virtual community, just like we're doing today. We're having a virtual interview, and I can tell everyone in the audience. I've seen Chris at work. I wish you could pull up the video reviews that you do, because it's pretty impressive stuff. But let's jump into the meat and the potatoes of why we're here today.
Sure.
Most people struggle throughout their life with 4 different areas of their life, and that would be like their personal circumstances, their physical circumstances, professional circumstances, which we've been talking about, and their financial circumstances. And there's adversity in all of that, and wherever you're coming from on that spectrum, it's always going to kind of be a sliding scale. And I love getting people's perspective based on where they are, because we're all in a different place. And
Mhm.
maybe if somebody is out there listening to this, and they feel like they can relate to you, Chris, or relate to me, they'll pick up a strategy or two that they'll be able to use, and that's the whole point of this show. So let's
Right.
jump in. I love asking this first question because it's kind of an easy one, but you're a bit younger, so maybe you haven't done this practice of actually buying a book for somebody. But I'd love to know, what book or books have you gifted or recommended to a friend, and why?
So I was gonna. So right away, obviously, interesting question. I mean, to be honest, I'm not a big reader. I haven't read a vast majority of books in my lifetime. I'm a guy that's, if anything, I've spent a bunch of time reading like biographies and autobiographies, whether it's TV shows or movies, documentaries have always intrigued me. So it's more or less that version of in a book,
Mhm.
reading about people's lives, obviously. But right away, um, I'm honestly trying to think of a time in the last little while that I've even suggested somebody a book. But some books that I've enjoyed reading in the past are I guess, to stick on the script of sport. 2 books. one of them's called Breaking Away. It's a story about Patrick O'Sullivan. He's a former professional hockey player in the NHL. He grew up in Ontario, and his stories, a story of resilience. He's a kid that was, he like we all. I'm sure we've all heard about the nightmare father that pushes the kid too hard, but he is the nightmare of all nightmares, and he ended up making it to the NHL despite physical and mental abuse from family members, specifically his father. So he's got a pretty good story. Another book is called Playing with Fire. That's another story about Theo Fleury. I'm sure you're quite aware of Theo Fleury, perhaps even aware of his story.
Mm-hmm.
He's another guy he's like Patrick O'Sullivan. He's an undersized hockey player, but obviously had a lot of determination and have there's a lot of hard work in his life, but Theo's a little bit differently. He moved away from home, and he has a past of sexual assault and physical assault, and obviously that leading to more mental side of things. And unfortunately, he's created a really interesting story in that sense, but it's obviously for the wrong reasons. And those two guys are just they're obviously intriguing stories. They're unique stories, and you to me, there's a lot of perspective in those two stories, and you can take, you like really you can read those stories, and it's like, things aren't that bad for me. Things aren't that hard for me. Like I can work through some things that I'm dealing with and whatnot. So like I said, those two stories are pretty humbling and can put a lot of your life into perspective. And then two books that I've liked that aren't sport specific, but again, I guess staying on the topic of biographies, autobiographies, and quite frankly, resilience and great stories. The first one is called The Happiest Man. It's about a fellow named Eddie Jaku. He's a guy that's survived the Holocaust, endured some really hard times in his life through that. And he's a guy that's, lived to 100+ years old. And again, the title of the story is The Happiest Man on Earth. And he chooses to, you know, he reflects on we'll call it an incredible journey that he's had, but he chooses to stay positive, stay happy, live and forgive essentially. And, I guess move on with your life. And it's like, man, if this guy can let things go, I think we can let things go. You know what I mean? And learn to live a happier life. Another book that I like is called The Long Walk to Freedom, and that's one about Nelson Mandela. Again, another person that has an extensive story, and he's obviously a resilient man coming from parts of Africa, basically coming from nothing to becoming prime minister, president, I forget what it was, of South Africa. And I think he's won a Nobel Peace Prize once upon a time. Like he's obviously done some pretty incredible things in his life, and he's a big activist for the anti-apartheid that happened in South Africa, and he's made a lot of positive changes. And again, he's endured some, being jailed for 25 years. He's endured a lot of negative things in his life, but despite all that, chooses to be positive, chooses to look forward, and chooses to, have a better future for him and the people around him.
Well, I got to say this, for somebody who says he doesn't like to read, you've just mentioned 4 awesome books and 4 stories that are very compelling and very worthwhile investigating and reading for those of you out there who haven't heard of these people, or I mean, I think some of the people we've heard of, some maybe less well known, but all great stories in their own right, and some for the wrong reasons, but they're all about people dealing with adversity in their lives. And
absolutely,
when I think of the third book you mentioned there with the gentleman from the Holocaust and happiness, the lesson that I've learned about happiness in life, it's not the destination, it's not what happened yesterday, it's did you realize your full potential today? Take it one day at a time. Learn to be happy one day at a time. You can't do anything about the past. The future is yet to come. But if you can just focus on how can I do the right things to move forward today and do my best today. And
right.
if my best means I'm 1% better at something today, then that was my best. And
it's a pretty positive day.
You keep adding that up over a lifetime, you get to a pretty special place. That's for sure. So that was a great first answer. So way to kick that off with 4 great books. So the next question I'd like to ask you is, and I probably know what this is, but maybe I don't. What activity brings you the most joy in life, and why?
So I to be honest, this one kind of stumped me because I mean, I'm assuming a lot of us, most of us in life have, quite a few activities that can bring us quite a bit of joy or whatever it may be. But honestly, right away, the first thing that came in mind was work. Um, was I like this the like yeah, I mentioned being the assistant GM of Renfrew earlier, but also on the side is I do my own skill development and skills training, this and that. And during the season now, it's been working with a couple younger teams, and I mean really young. Like usually, I'm used to working with teenagers or kids even in their early 20s. But this year, I've started working with some kids that are 9, 10 years old, and really more at the grassroots level. And like you kind of mentioned, with whether it be yourself or with Warren and not teaching fundamentals, is that's my opportunity to teach fundamentals and really truly make a difference, at least with hockey, in these kids' lives. Whether it be trying to create good habits in their game, trying to like I like going out there and talking about working on skills, stick handling, skating, but I also like talking about giving a good effort, competing hard, trying your best. I do, you know, try to be somewhat inspirational in that avenue too, and really, like I said, just trying to get kids to work hard and maximize their potential. So right away, I do genuinely enjoy that side of work. I enjoy doing the other side of work, just watching a lot of hockey games, trying to help make trades, trying to facilitate signings and whatnot, just building a hockey team. That's, to me, I've always felt it was inevitable that I was going to work in hockey, because part of me feels like hockey's the only thing I know. And I almost feel like I'm regurgitating the word hockey. We've mentioned it so many times in this interview already. Um, but like I was always the kid that was playing video games, and I wouldn't even play the hockey game. I would just do sit there and do trades and try to build teams the whole time at like 10 years old, and I've forever been wanting to do that. So I feel like it is inevitable that sure, it was a goal of mine to get there, and obviously still trying to keep climbing to whatever level it brings me. But yeah, I mean, short answer again, I do really enjoy work. And then on the other side of things, like I just started playing hockey recreationally again with Warren on Friday nights and some of his friends there, and that's been a lot of fun so far. Um, and then another thing I jotted down is genuinely my family, like my parents, my girlfriend, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. They really mean a lot to me in my life. So they're an avenue that brings consistent happiness to me. Um, and then other little things like I've got written down. I love watching football. I love going on the fishing trip like we did last year. Warren and I actually just went out and started shooting his new 22 gun that he bought recently, and him and I have been having a lot of fun the last couple of times we've been doing that. So really, those are a lot of things, I guess, that take up my time and bring a lot of joy to my life.
So, for those of you who are catching on, Chris keeps mentioning a gentleman by the name of Warren. That would be my son, who's also 30 years old, one of Chris's good friends. And Chris and I, and Warren and his dad, Blake, or Chris and his dad, Blake, and Warren and I went on a spring fishing trip up into Hornpain, Ontario earlier this year, where I got to know Chris really well and his dad. And for anybody who wants to check that out on my YouTube channel, there's a good video on there called Pieces of Your Father that highlights the highlights of that trip. But just to give context for people who keep hearing the name Warren, that's who Warren is. So good to know you and Warren are out in the woods shooting his new gun. That's
Yeah, it's working. None of us have got hurt yet or anything like that. We've been
well,
having some fun.
that's the good news. The funny thing is, people used to go paintballing when Warren played hockey. My son played hockey.
Hmm.
The team always wanted to go paintballing, and the
Yep.
moms would always go, "Oh, you can't do that. It's too dangerous." And the guys would say, "Tell you what, all the moms can come and play paintball together for free for one afternoon." They'd come out and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, you guys go play paintball. That is awesome." So like, so
They're the
long as
most
it's
competitive.
oh yeah, so long as you're responsible with this stuff, and I know Warren is, I've got no qualms about everybody coming out of the woods in one piece. Let's switch gears. So that was well, not switch gears quite yet. That was a
Mhm.
good intro into talking about our personal resilience, our personal relationships. The last thing I want to ask you is, sometimes in life, and you're old enough now to realize this, we have some relationships that don't work out as well as others when it comes to friendships.
Mhm.
And just what's the hardest part about managing your friendships, and why and how have you handled it?
So I guess for me personally, I mean, I guess I'll give the short answer after. But for me personally, I mean, I've got a decently vast majority of friend groups. Like I've made friends from Ottawa, I've got friends from Toronto area. I've obviously got a lot of friends from the Niagara area where I'm from. Um, but keeping up with all of those individuals is can be definitely hard. I mean, what I've got jotted down is number one, communication. Obviously, I at the end of the day, we never communicate with each other, whether it be relationships or friendships. We could always communicate more, of
Mhm.
course. Um, Distance would be an obvious answer, but really, I think the real answer is I've got written down laziness and just keep being caught up in your everyday life. Um, I'm 31 now. You more or less, I'm in a routine in my life at this point, so not always communicating with friends or setting aside time to spend time with friends and chat with them, hang out with them, etc. That's not always in my daily schedule. So again, I view that as getting caught up in life, but two, it's also me being lazy. I'll work a few days in a row, and you're excited for that day off, so you don't really think about spending that day off, and then nighttime comes around and you're like, dang, maybe I should have went and seen so and so or gave so and so a call or whatever. But I kind of accumulate that all being caught up in life and being lazy.
You know what? That you've hit the nail on the head. It's all about communication and trying to make an effort. There used to be a thing that we would do, and it was we would go to social events for LinkedIn actually in
Mhm.
Toronto, and we would play this game where we would take our cell phone and we would take our contacts, open it up, and then we'd start spinning through it, scrolling, and then hit stop. And whoever it hit stop on, you had to call that person. And it was
Okay.
sometimes it was weird because you may not have known that person all that well. And you're like, how did that person even get my phone? Who is this? But it forced you to have an uncomfortable conversation. And, the fun thing about that is something you could do just to kind of amuse yourself one day and think, well, what do I want to do for the next 10 minutes? Oh, I'm going to call you, and off you go and have a phone call,
Yep.
or send a text and see what comes back.
Sure.
That's always a fun game. So, well, I appreciate that. I want to jump into the physical resilience part. So that was personal resilience, talking about how we sort of manage our relationships, and the things that we would try to manage close to us. Let's
Yep.
talk about physical resilience, because this is one that I think is important for a lot of people, especially like you're 31. You're in that sweet spot of the people I tend to coach and mentor honestly are between 30 and 40 years old, and so you're kind of getting into that realm. Um, if you have to think about it, like my claim to fame is Ironman, done many of them, and I started at the age of 40. So when you think about Ironman, which is swim, bike, run, and the swim's 4K, the bike is 180K, followed by a 42K run. Which one of those things do you think would scare you the most, and why?
So thinking of that, I to be honest, I think it's swimming. Um, I mean, biking, obviously it's a long distance, but I'm in the boat of I'm like, man, you can coast a little bit at times. To me, biking would almost be the easiest, I think. Again, I've never done an Ironman, I've never done a triathlon, a marathon, anything like that. So I've got no experience in this category. Somebody watching this that has done those events could very well disagree, and for the right reasons because they've experienced and they know. But me personally, I feel like biking may be the easiest. Um, from there, I would probably choose running. I've I'm not so good of a runner now. I'm not nearly as in good shape as I was, but back in my teenage years and when I was playing sports and whatnot, I could run pretty well and run. I'm not saying any fast or anything, but I could do a good job of running a good distance. Um, I had good endurance for that. So that leads me to swimming. Straight up, I'm just not a very good swimmer. People underestimate one, the strength of currents, the how heavy water is and how strong water is. Like people will forever underestimate Mother Nature, in my opinion. Um, so from there, I mean, frig, like what if it's a day, it's, it's windy, it's raining, like that's a hard swim, 4 kilometers. And especially if you're swimming into current, like, oh my god, like that to me sounds like the worst. Now it could be the opposite. It could be a sunny day. You could be swimming with the current. It could be a little bit easier. And then from there, it's like you could argue you could coast it a little bit. But in my opinion, I think I would struggle with, or at least look forward to the least doing the swimming part of that part of the Ironman triathlon, whatever the event is.
It speaks to getting out of our comfort zones, right? That's typically, people answer this. This makes me feel like it would be the most out of my comfort zone, and that's part of the fun of trying to understand how to attack things that are in your life out of your comfort zone.
Hmm.
The older you get, the more obstacles you face. It's not going to feel like something you want to do. Not, I'm saying go do an Ironman, but I'm just saying all kinds of things in life. And it's the skill set that you're learning that the Ironman taught me was, hey, I didn't know how to swim, and I had to go figure it out. And
Right.
and once I figured it out, that sense of accomplishment of, oh, that wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. And yeah,
Hmm.
there was a whole lot of hard stuff in there, but I got through it. I learned how to show up every day, push through it, and it's still I have a love-hate relationship with swimming. I hate it on the way there, going to the swim, but once I get there and I'm in the water and I'm doing it, I'm like, oh man, this is pretty cool. Like
Right.
and you come up out of the water and people go, how far did you swim, man? Like, how do you do that? And it's like, yeah, you just show up every day and you do it. And eventually, a little bit turns into a lot. So no, great
Right.
answer. And most people answer the same thing. So I love kind of coming
Okay.
back and
Okay.
talking about getting out of your comfort zone. You're not alone, Chris. You're not alone in that struggle at all. Um,
Good.
Now, not hockey as a sport, but what type of exercise? If you had to pick an exercise, what's your favorite exercise and why?
So to be honest, I actually had hockey written down, but at the same time, I don't I was like, now that I say, I guess we're getting a bit older. I know 31's not very old. But I was saying, I'm like, one thing I used to do a lot was stretching. I'm primarily yoga.
Mm-hmm.
I think yoga activates a lot of muscles. To me, it activates a little bit of brain activity too. To me, there's a mental component. And overall, it's good for you. Obviously, there's different styles of yoga that you can do, but yeah, I mean, back when I played hockey, I really enjoyed doing yoga quite a few times a week, and pretty well stretching every day and just making sure you're limbered up and feeling good. I mean, now that I'm still on the ice 3, 4, 5 in the summer times, like 7 to 10 times a week at least. Um, yeah, the hips and the knees get a little sore at night when you get home and you're laying down doing nothing, or when you wake up the next day and you're like, yeah, I'm feeling it a little bit. So I guess I guess yoga might be my answer, or just simply stretch more.
I got two words for you: hot tub. But that's another story.
I've heard about that.
That's been the best purchase. I should have a question on here. What's been the best purchase of your life? I'm going to say the hot tub is probably the best thing that I've invested in a long, long time. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, yoga is one that I would agree. I certainly don't stretch enough. And I think that's a really good thing that most people could take away is just doing a little bit of yoga helps activate the body, like you said, build up those core muscles. The other thing is meditation. That's something I
Mhm.
kind of laughed at when I was younger. And now I challenge anybody to sit there and try and go through a 10-minute meditation, just a breathing exercise where you focus on one thing and not let your brain get carried away and thinking something else. It is singularly the hardest thing that I've ever tried to do. I can't
Extremely
concentrate for
difficult.
30 seconds. You
Correct.
know, it's crazy. So no, that's a really good answer. Um, so thinking about, you were saying you're 31. That's not old, but you're definitely moving in that direction. What
Mhm.
scares you the most about growing old and why?
Um, I'd say thinking about this one, it wasn't me personally getting old, but I hate seeing family get old
Hmm.
because that makes me recognize, time's passing by, time's ticking, and yeah, we're we're not getting any younger. So one, I hate seeing family get old because that's closer to the inevitable, I guess, to go really deep. Um, but yeah, I mean, I simply put, I hate seeing family members get old. I wish we were young forever. I wish we could just keep the good times rolling. I wish we could, you know, keep doing family events with everybody involved forever and ever and ever. But that's not life, unfortunately. So yeah, to me, it sucks seeing family members get old, and quite frankly, recognizing how much time is passing by.
Hmm. Um, the one thing I would take away from that is there's preconception that growing old has to be a bad thing.
Mhm.
And I think, if you're anything like me and my family, I saw everybody that sort of went north of 50 declined in their health, which was obviously led to a lot of, sadness and not so great situations.
Right.
So that's kind of the one thing that scared me was the decline of my mental health, not so much my physical health, and realizing that it's my physical health, if done correctly, and what I put into my body that's going to give me quality years as I get older. So the one thing that I would take away from that is, we have in our society, we always look at sort of, you get 50, 60, 70, you expect your quality of life to decline. I think we need more leadership around us. We need more people around us who have good quality of life in those years, and be able to stand up and talk about the things they did when they were 30, 40, 50, 60 that led to better outcomes later in life. So
Right.
there's some lessons in there to be learned for sure. Let's jump into professional resilience, because this speaks more towards careers. But I think anybody can learn from this. What new skill would you like to learn, and why?
So thinking about this one, and I don't even know if you want to constitute it as, I guess it would be more of a physical skill. Um, but I wrote, I guess kind of oddly would be, short answer would be building a computer. Um, I think it would be beneficial to my work. I think it would be beneficial to my life. Tech is something that's always interested me, and I've had somewhat of a grasp on it. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't know anything about tech. Like TVs, computers, um, different consoles. Like I wish I could build them. I think it one like right now, I'm all connected to a laptop and I've got three different screens going here, but I wish I had an actual full on CPU going on so that one, it'd be performing better. Two, I think it'd be beneficial to my work life. Like you briefly mentioned before, I do some video recordings and break down video for hockey players and try to help them become better on the ice through, demonstration of video and talking and learning and seeing essentially. So from straight up through there, I would have a more powerful device in order to do things better. I would have more storage in order to store things and I guess build things, purchase things, so I can add on to what I'm doing. But overall, it'd be something that would, quite frankly, hopefully last me a lifetime too. And therefore, I would have the skill to be able to fix it, add on parts, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if that's really
Oh,
the answer
100%.
you're hoping
No,
for in that
100% it is.
question,
No,
but I
100.
guess I guess oddly is saying like I wish I knew how to build a computer.
Listen, okay, I was around when the first computers started. You've grown up with them. So I
Yes.
can tell you this, it's a blessing and a curse. When it works, it's a blessing. When it
Mhm.
stops working, I lose my mind. I don't know what to do, because I am not a,
Likewise.
a tech guy. And it's
I
like,
get
I,
very
I just
frustrated.
wish this thing would work. I'll pay the money. I'll pay somebody to build me a computer that's never going to break down, never going to run out of memory. I'll pay the money for this. Just make it work, and make it work fast without lagging. So I totally get it. Yeah, that's a great skill to learn. And you articulated why exactly. Um, what existing skill do you have that you would like to master? Because a lot of us, we think we're good at a lot of things, but not a master of anything. What's the
Mhm.
one thing you'd like to master, be just proficient in?
So, I guess to get back to hockey, and my answer would be, short answer, I said continue to get better at skill development. But more so, I would like to develop, or at least get better at being able to develop decision making on the ice, and in that quicker reactions on the ice. Therefore, making faster plays, making faster decisions should equate to a better hockey player in the grand scheme of things. Um, some people already do a good job of that now, in my opinion, but I also like to kind of find my own way to do things and be unique about things. So one short answer, like I said, get better at skill development, but really I'd like to get better at teaching the mental side of things. Cause I mean, you we all know about Wayne Gretzky, and yeah, the typical answer is he was never the fastest, he was never the strongest, he was never the most skilled, but he was the smartest and he made the best decisions and he had the quickest reaction times.
So on that note, let me share a fun story with you. I don't know if I've ever told this on YouTube, but I used to own the brands Hockey Mom and Hockey Dad in Canada. That led me to a nice meeting with Walter Gretzky on several occasions. And
Okay.
there was one day where Walter and I were at a TV station waiting to get interviewed together, and it was up in Hamilton. And he was telling me a story, and he said, here's the difference between Wayne and everybody else. He said Wayne was almost OCD about practicing. So if you think about it, Walter built Wayne a rink in the backyard. The
Yeah.
reason why he built Wayne in the backyard was self-preservation, because up in Brantford, it was frickin' cold, and he had enough. He was outside working on the bell lines all day long. He didn't want to be outside all night too, standing there at the rink. So, which was out in the open in a field. So he built a rink in the backyard simply for self-preservation. And his
Hmm.
wife Phyllis would quite often have to say to him after he was done watching the news, hey, did you get Wayne in the house yet? Because he would totally forget Wayne was in the backyard. So, as much as people like to say Walter was this ever-present hockey dad sort of coaching him along, no, he was in the house watching TV while Wayne was out in the backyard. Now that's now been filled in. That's a pool in the backyard, but or no dugout. It's a pool. But the other thing he said was when Wayne would come in every night, in the basement, he had a very specific place for all of his equipment. It all got laid out so he could see it all dry out. And in his mind, that OCD was, I know where all my things are. So tomorrow, when I'm driving to the game with my dad, I'm not going to be thinking about, oh shit, are my gloves in the bag? Is my helmet in the bag? Like I'm a hockey dad. How many times have I gone to the rink and you get to the rink and somebody says, does anybody have an extra pair of gloves or a helmet or skates? My kid left them at home and it's a 2-hour drive. Like
Right.
we try to empower our kids to pack their own bags and we don't check them thinking this is a life lesson until you get to the arena and somebody's missing something. Then it's a parental problem that you got to deal with and you're heading off to the closest sporting goods store. So
Yeah.
what Walter said was that Wayne had this uncanny ability to he always knew that his stuff was dry and ready to go in the bag. So he was organized, number one.
Hmm.
Number two, because he was organized, the conversations that they had going to the rink was, hey, little Johnny here, he's working really hard and he's really good at, turning to the right, turn to the right. So I need to find a way to get him to the puck as he comes around the right-hand side of the net. So it's on his stick when he comes around the net. So they talked about helping other teammates get better.
Hmm.
That's all the prep time was in the car rides. And so many people think it was all about he was bigger, stronger, more skilled. He's got
No.
the most assists for a reason. He was
Yeah.
always thinking about how can I make everybody around me better,
Hmm.
right? So that at the end of the day, we could all improve together. So that's just a fun aside. I don't think I've ever shared that story.
No, I've
Um,
never heard you say that one. That's a good one.
yeah, so that's my fun connection to Wayne Gretzky. Um, okay, so let's just talk about the last thing here, which hey, you're a former hockey player. What's your biggest regret in your career so far and why?
So thinking about it, I guess playing wise, I had the answer of just simply not standing up for myself slash speaking up more in the
Okay.
sense of not telling enough people to go F themselves. Um, in my opinion, honestly, um, like I said, it's obviously you're a teenager, you're in, say you're playing junior hockey, you're in that setting. Obviously, you want to listen to your coach. You're trying to make an impact on the team you're playing for. You're trying to do the best personally, and at the same time, like you're not going to go into the coach's office demanding things, this or that. Like you're pretty much a yes man. Like get in, like fit in or fuck off, essentially. So you want to go down the road of fitting in, but
Yeah.
looking back on it, yeah, there's instances that I wish I stood up for myself, or I wish I spoke up more, and just I don't know, something simple like that. But professionally, there freshly, I had a couple answers right away. There's times where I could just relax and breathe in certain situations. I wish I did that more as opposed to being a hothead. At times, taking it back and enjoying more moments, I'd say. Like whether it be through coaching or managing, whether it be through skill development, just truly enjoying the moment and enjoying what's happening and appreciate something that I get to enjoy and do for a living as opposed to being so serious and wanting this, and this, and trying to get things done on time, et cetera, et cetera. And then also being too reserved with my abilities per se. Like as an individual, I am a confident person. I'm generally confidently spoken, but at the same time, I'm not going out of my way to prove my worth per se. I'm not going out of my way to make sure that other people understand that I'm good at what I do. Like I guess per se you could go down the road of, you know, I'll like within the hockey world, you see people move up the ranks, so you see people get hired, and for some people you always have it in the back of your mind like, yeah, I could do that too. Like why is he getting that opportunity? And hey, perhaps he was maybe a bit more of a go-getter, so he went out and got that opportunity, whereas I didn't put myself out there per se. So I guess that could be a regret of mine so far. Obviously I'm young enough for that to change and to learn from perhaps those past experiences, but also just, I guess, putting myself out there more. Like before, you and I have spoken about, like obviously you have an online profile, an online personality to you, where you're posting stuff online about, like quite frankly, this is part of your job of what you're doing right now. Whereas part of my job as a skill trainer could be, or perhaps even should be, putting stuff online and seeing what comes of it, and also to help people learn. Like there's a lot of people in the hockey world that do skill development, do skills training, and they post drills online, they post little speeches online, whether they're talking or showing things, whatever the case may be. But there's a lot of on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. There's a lot of content out there about drills and hockey stuff and whatnot, and that's something that I've never done. I mean, I'm like for me, I've always been pretty much the last 5-ish years, it's just been myself out there as a coach whenever I do these skates. So I'm not one to, I personally, I just can't really bring myself to bringing a phone out on the ice and recording a kid doing a drill, because I feel like that's taking away from me actually teaching the drill, me actually making sure the kid's doing it correctly, or, giving positive feedback to me. That's taking away from the parents spending good money. Like we all know, hockey's not cheap, and parents spend good money for their kids to play hockey. So in like I try my best to respect that these people are spending good money and they deserve my full attention and my best effort. So in my opinion, I feel like if I'm bringing out a phone, I feel like I'm not giving it my best effort 100% of the time, which is can also be incorrect, because a phone can be completely be used as a tool to correct the kid, show him, demonstrate him what he's doing incorrect or what he's doing correct, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess in that sense, so far, and again, it's something I can change and learn from, and do something differently moving forward. But so far, in a sense, I do regret not posting more stuff online, because so much can come of simply posting stuff online, whether it be other networking opportunities, people see this and that, and or maybe other ideas for different content is created by me posting stuff online, just simply putting drills. So yeah, I guess long answer, that could be a professional regret, we'll say.
You know what? It's never too late. And we had a conversation before the interview started, and there are opportunities. I know you bring certain skill sets to the table. Content creation is, for those of you who don't really understand the scope, it's not all about TikTok videos and people trying to be influencers. It's about getting attention and creating value. And those two things, when you do them right, they can become an evergreen piece of content. Like I often say to people, I've written one book in my life, and I used to sell it when I did speaking engagements. But that book, after I sold it for the first time, would get passed around to how many other people. I would never get compensated for that. So much to
Mhm.
you're a coach, you're sharing skills. I'm not saying necessarily film the kids on the ice, but think about the breakdowns of plays that you do. I've never seen that ever before on YouTube.
Mhm.
And just like we were explaining, being able to explain the basics of the rules of the game. I mean, everybody always jumps to this elitist spot where we're going to try and develop the top echelon kids. I'm
Right.
telling you right now, my dad didn't play hockey. And when I joined hockey, everybody expected my dad was going to teach me the rules. They never did. He never did. So I was at a disadvantage for a long time. I didn't understand what offside meant. I really didn't. I remember very distinctly getting knocked into the boards in the other team's end, puck coming out of their end zone, or out of their end zone, out of their end,
Mhm.
crossing the blue line, and I'm lying there on the ground thinking, okay, I've been just boarded into the boards, cross-checked into the boards, and I'm lying there like out of it. And I see my four teammates standing on the blue line going, come on, get back over here so we can go back in. Like we were young kids at the time.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand what was going on. Nobody explained it to me. So I think like there's a huge market for taking baby steps that
Sure.
that's the opportunity on content where you might find some opportunities. And to be
Certainly.
clear, the content creator marketplace is pegged to be $500 billion in revenue next year. So in
Well,
2025. So there's a lot of money to be made, not necessarily being an influencer, but actually providing value to an area that's underserved. And I'm telling you right now, it's that beginner where people don't understand the game. Explain the rules.
right.
There's the funniest thing I've seen in a long time in Ted Lasso when he was coaching. He went from football coach to soccer coach over in Europe. And the first time the guys run down the field, the umpire says, that was offside. He goes, what do you mean that's offside? He goes, it was offside. He goes, no, what do you mean? I don't understand. What's offside? Because he didn't understand what offside was in soccer. Explain it to me. And that's the basics I'm getting to is most people don't understand the basics. They want to jump right into fifth gear and they don't have the mastery of first gear yet. So that might be an opportunity. Any other hockey coaches that are listening to this? Shh, you didn't hear that. This is Chris's deal. Okay, let's jump into this last area, financial resilience. We're going to try and keep this under 10 minutes if we can to try to tuck it into 1 hour. But what's your favorite? I think I might know the answer to this. I might not. What's your favorite type of income-bearing asset and why?
I mean, for me, I mean, simple answer would be, I guess, a house, because being a homeowner, that's really, I'm 31. I don't have a lot of assets in my life. So simply that would be it. I mean, I had it also written down. I'm like, for young people, I'm like, simply right away, you could, an introduction to financials is get a TFSA, get an RRSP. That can lead to small, big gains over time. Obviously, it's a good introduction to, if you want to dive more into the financial world, whether it be stocks, crypto, buying a car, buying a house, et cetera, down the road. But it starts to at least make you conscious and consider your own financial independence and decisions that you can make within that. But like I said, I don't have a lot of assets right now, to be honest.
I would disagree. You own your own home, and the difference there is an income-bearing asset is something that puts money in your pocket, not take it out. So I own my own home, but I don't have tenants. So it's not actually an income-bearing asset. Although it's appreciating, it is a liability until the day I sell it, because it costs me money to run this home. You, on the other hand, I think had tenants in your house who were living there. So that creates an income-bearing asset for you. That gets your mortgage paid down quicker. That's a smart move. And the biggest takeaway that I usually hear from people who have invested in real estate at your age is don't get attached to the asset. Get attached to the lifestyle, which is, you're still renting a room, just you're renting it from yourself. And you're controlling who else is also renting, from that community as well. With that kind of mindset, you can flip this sucker and get leapfrog everybody, your peers who haven't even gotten into the financial or the housing market yet. All right, fun one here. What service have you paid for recently for $100 or less? Somebody else to do for you, and why?
As easy as this question sounds, this one actually made me think. And I'm like, I barely ever go out to eat. I couldn't tell you the last time I've gone to a restaurant. I'm not a very big drinker. I got a fridge behind me. I think there's 2 Belgian beers in it right now, and that's it. So it's not like I go out and get that service. So simply, I was just like, I got an oil change about a month ago, and that costed me just over 120. But that was because I got that was because I got a couple extra things with it. But I had to get an oil change because I had to drive all the way to Minnesota and back and make sure the Mazda 3 got there in one piece.
But that's a great example. I've got friends who change their own oil because they know how to do it. I don't, so I pay somebody to do that. So I'm just like you. Although go to Q-Loop, because I think on Hartzell Road there, because it's not. Well, I've never paid more than $80 for an oil change, but.
I do Pennzoil on Hartzell, but I got a couple extra things with it this time. That's why it was 120. But maybe
you got
this
the air
answer
filter.
should have. Yeah, actually I think I did. Really, maybe this answer should have been the answer to my skill question, or to your skill question, is learn how to do an oil change.
It's just one of those things. I love asking the question because a lot of people say, "What business? I'm good at something. What business could I do?" And sometimes that might spark somebody to say, "Hey, I'm good at doing oil changes." Like my next door neighbor's a fire captain. He does brakes. He's a mechanic who
There
became
you
a
go.
fireman. He does brakes in his driveway. All of it. I can't go in my driveway and try and change my snow tires on my kid's car or my car without Kyle coming over with his jack on. Okay, what are we doing today? He just wants to be in it like a dirty shirt. So
He enjoys it.
um, no, that's awesome. Last question, and it is maybe easier for you to answer because you're a little closer to being in the school age. But when's the right time to start learning about financial accountability from your perspective? When do you think we should start teaching this to kids?
So, I mean, that I'm sure that answer can vary depending on a person's background, whether they're simply rich, they're poor, they're middle class, or whatever. But at the end of the day, I think it can all be the same answer. I mean, I think it doesn't start. It doesn't hurt to start in like a preteen or early teen age. Again, it gets them understanding saving. It gets them understanding thinking about their future. Don't go blow all your money on candy and video games like I did. Try to actually practice some financial patience, and recognize that, yeah, it's if you want something, well, save some money for it. And unfortunately, not everyone can afford to go out and buy this right now. You got to work a little bit, you got to save a little bit, and yeah, if you want to go to the corner store and buy a bunch of chocolate bars, well, you're gonna have to wait another week or two if you want to buy that TV, kid.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. So I think it doesn't hurt to start them at, like, going to something simple like going to PC Financial and setting them up with a free account there for a 12-year-old. To me, doesn't hurt, and sticking $20 in an account and go from there. And then from there, even perhaps thinking about TFSA or something like that. I don't I think that can be right in the same ballpark of starting to consider doing those things that early.
You hit the nail on the head when you talked about the words you were looking for were delayed gratification.
Mhm.
And that's one thing that I think we could all learn from and remind ourselves that unless we have the money to buy this thing, buying something on credit is going to cause nothing but anxiety in your life if you don't have the
Mhm.
money to pay for it. And that leads me to my final question. The bonus question is there's a lot of things that cause people anxiety. And some things, there are some people who are clinically depressed and need professional help, but there's a lot of
Sure.
people out there who are they've backed themselves into a corner. Maybe they've overextended themselves on their credit card. Maybe they've neglected to eat well and exercise, and that's bringing on lifestyle changes that they don't really care for. The list goes on and on. Maybe they haven't improved themselves in their career. How do you, when you face anxiety, because we all do, what is your go-to strategy when things are going sideways to sort of pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and get moving forward again?
So kind of like I had a couple words, just words written down, jotted down here for that answer. And short term, or I guess short term success would just be simply just to breathe. Have some deep breaths, breathe. If you're panicking in a situation, going through anxiety riddled type situation, just breathe. Again, once you've actually breathed, looking more long term, you can again put things into perspective depending on the situation. Like we talked about the books in the first question. Like, Frig, go read about Eddie Jaku. You want to learn about perspective and you know treating every day and being happy every day and almost living every day like it's your last. Well, go read Eddie's story, and again, put your life in perspective compared to his. From there, you can lean on past experiences, depending on what you're having anxiety, panic over, or whatever the case is. Again, leaning on past experiences, how you've gotten, how you've dealt with said situations before. And ultimately, I had written down, if it's professionally, you're being caused anxiety, grief, whatever, or just anything in your life. I just wrote, ultimately believe in yourself. um, I think a lot of people lack a lot of confidence, and I think a lot of people just don't ultimately believe in themselves. They don't try things to get them to realize why they should believe in themselves. They don't understand that they are capable of doing things, mentally or physically, or both. But like I said, ultimately, ultimately there should be a high belief in yourself, because that's you've only got you in this life. You know what I mean? Really,
Yep.
like, yeah, you've got family, you got friends, but ultimately, it's you've got you. And like I said, believe in yourself.
So the from a psychological standpoint, what you're talking about is people moving from a fixed to a growth mindset, right?
Hmm.
There are so many people who have anxiety because they believe their circumstances can't change, won't change, and it's because they're not taking the steps required to actually develop new skills, to learn and grow from past mistakes so they can avoid them in the future. It's saying I can be that better version of myself if I just start paying attention and maybe not put myself in this situation in the first place. And then I won't have to face it again the next time. So, hey, Chris, I just want to say thank you very much for being a part of this today. I hope for whoever's watching this, whether you watched it live today or you're watching this on the restream on YouTube on our Resilient Strategies podcast, this is all about not talking to people who are perfect. Not that I'm saying you're not perfect, Chris. It's about getting perspectives and different perspectives, because we could all sit here and say, the world is sunshine and roses. It's not. And we all have to find ways together to kind of work our way through it. So I would just ask, if you enjoyed what you saw here today, please remember to like and subscribe. Tell your friends if you think they could get some value from this. There's a lot more podcasts where this came from on our channel. There are some videos on there that are designed to help give you strategies to move forward based on the life experiences of myself and the people around me who add value to this channel. So again, Chris, thank you very much for being a part of this. Everybody,
Thanks for having me, man. It was a great chat. I had a lot of fun speaking with you today.
I knew this was going to be a good one. So thanks, everybody. And we'll talk to you next week with our next interview. Bye for now.